Hey, this is Ramon. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's NaNoWrimo Day 23. I wrote 2,470 words today, which is good. Yeah, I don't usually make that sound. All in all, it's been good. I wrote a scene where the king and the messenger, or his head spy basically, discuss what to do about the older character taking on a more heroic or champion role in the village, while also discussing the merits of the younger main character. Then I wrote a following scene, which was actually really beautiful. The older character and the younger character, thanks to the warlord, got to have a funeral for one of the minor characters that died. Well, what about all the characters that they had to kill to get back the cattle? So I then wrote an opposing scene where the quote-unquote bad guys were mourning for their dead, and where the leader was using the cattle raid, not as an example of heroics, but as an example of something to take vengeance upon, and stoking their flames of anger, and just kind of getting the survivors and the groups that and the families that would have been of the dead to get angry at the village for trying to protect what belonged to them rightfully. So even though the cattle belong to the warlord and the warlord protects the village, the family of the bandits would still be mourning their loss. So the leader of another gang that was going to make a deal for the cattle with the gang that was slaughtered came in and was like, well, then, they view you as outcast, and so let's go get them. Let's get the cattle back, and let's be in charge. Let's have a revolt. So they're going to full revolution against the palace and against the warlord. So now the warlord and the palace are on the same side, and you kind of get where it's going from there. So some of my characters get to play hero now. But that's the writing. What else has happened? Well, today's Thanksgiving. You might have noticed there wasn't a video yesterday. That's because family and there was some drunkenness, and a neighbor decided to get on my case about the writing thing, and specifically about whether or not there's a future in the writing, and how it would be better to have a normal everyday job and that kind of thing. And so after a conversation like that, I didn't really feel like making a video. But yes, I am a writer, and yes, I do plan to continue to be a writer, even if it's a struggling, starving writer. I still plan to keep doing it. But it was interesting because I've never actually had that conversation with anyone. I don't talk about my family, but my families are musicians. That's what they are. So nobody really judges me for being an artist. They would rather I was a musician, but they don't care about the fact that I'm a writer. It doesn't bother them. In junior high, there was some stress because I wanted to draw. I wanted to do art, and they wanted me to play in the band, and obviously I didn't. I also didn't get to be in art, but my rebellion was to play football, which I was not good at all. I sucked. But not the point. The point is that I wanted to draw, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's the closest I've ever had. That's the closest thing, was that. But even then, it's a family of musicians, so they weren't saying that it wasn't a career. It was more like, we want you to be a musician and to go forward in your life with music. and I wanted to do martial arts and weightlifting. So what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I wanted to go on with martial arts and weightlifting, and they wanted me to go into music, and clearly I went with the martial arts and weightlifting. So I've never gotten to have the conversation of like, well, you know, art's not really a career, you know, writing's not really. So I got to have it, and it was very interesting. It was very, and I found myself pulling a lot of philosophy, you know, and even quoting Jordan Peterson at one point, which is really weird. Speaking of which, I plan to make a video on free speech at some point also. Maybe the video topic would be something like defending people even when you disagree with them, and defending their right to say what they say even if it offends you. That kind of thing, you know. But not the point. But I got to finally have this conversation, and it was interesting, and it was fun. I didn't do as well as I thought I would in a conversation like that. A few times I was left standing on only one foot. Sometimes I had no feet to stand on. I did not do well in the conversation. I used all the philosophy that I knew. I talked about how you can't tell if someone's successful until after they're dead. I explained, you know, how if you let your anxieties and your worries get to you, that's just worrying about the imaginary snakes. So, you know, that's the Jordan Peterson thing. And I used all the good arguments that I know. I used Socrates, Plato. I used Seneca. You know, I went through all the stuff that I tell myself, and I said it out loud, and the neighbor just wasn't buying it. It is not that he didn't think those things were true, but he looked at the fact that I have Bibles and Qurans and Buddhist texts and Taoist texts and says, well, you're just looking for answers. I'm like, no, I'm not looking for answers. You just think you're right. You know, I'm like, no, I don't think I'm right. I don't know if I'm right. I hope I'm right, but, you know, it's a different thing. And like he just kept on like throwing different things at me to see what would stick, and nothing stuck. But a few of them landed, man. A few of them hurt. And it was just really interesting to have that conversation, and it was really fun. It lasted a little too long because I didn't give in, and then the conversation was done, and that was it. But after that, I just didn't feel like making a video. Today, on the other hand, I got food from a barbecue place, and then tonight, the same neighbor, came by with a dinner, with a dinner from his family. I guess as a peace offering or whatever. So that was really cool. That was nice. So I had 2 Thanksgivings today. I usually talk to there's 3 people or 4 people I talk to almost every single Thanksgiving. And I didn't talk to any of them today. My best friend, my ex-employer, a female friend who I worked with at a college, and someone I knew a long time ago. And these 4 people were not in my life today. And there's a 5th, a good friend of mine from where I live. So these 5 people who I usually talk to every Thanksgiving, I didn't talk to this time. And so that was a little different. It's the first time in 18 years that I haven't talked to these people during a major holiday or a birthday or something. And I did eventually call my best friend, and he was like, well, I was expecting your call all day. You never called, so I didn't call you, you know, that kind of thing. And that was it. And then one of the persons that usually I talk to, they've recently gotten married, so I figured, well, maybe they're busy with the kid and all that kind of thing. But they, at the very last minute, like just as I was grabbing this to record, they sent me a Snapchat, you know, saying, hey, I totally slipped my mind. Sorry about that. So, you know, but that was my Thanksgiving. If you're wondering, considering that I'm Hispanic and Native American and all that kind of stuff, do I celebrate Thanksgiving? Yes, I celebrate Thanksgiving. I don't have a problem with Thanksgiving. I like Thanksgiving. I think it's good to give thanks. The actual Thanksgiving, the actual thing that's being celebrated, was not a horrible event. The consequences of that Thanksgiving were terrible, but that doesn't mean the event itself was terrible. So giving thanks and surviving and being grateful, that's not a bad thing. And the conquest of the United States and all that kind of stuff look, man, I like being an American, so I'm not complaining either. Uh, I get it, I really do. But on my uh, on my mother's side, well, on my mother's side, Native American. On my father's side, there's Spaniard and what's called mestizo, which is native Mexican blood, basically. So my father's side conquered himself, although I like to make the joke that my father's family conquered my mother's family, which is not really the case because, different areas. But I'm well familiar with the idea of conquest and forced conversion and all that kind of stuff. Um, I'm not as well versed in it as I'd like to be. I've really been trying hard to learn the history of Mexico and learn the history of Spain and learn the history of France because those are where my ancestors come from. And I haven't done a very good job of it. Obviously, I'm still stuck in Greek history. That's where I love, that's where I reside, and that's where I love to be. But I am making an effort, at least to buy the books that I would need to read to learn about my family history. But as for the Native American side, my uncle, the last uncle to know the entire family history, and I think his son became a member of the tribe or reintegrated into the tribe after his death, but he recently died in the past year. That's my last tie to the Native American part of my family. Great grandmother was a full member. My grandmother, who I didn't know was a full member, she died before I met her. I met the next wife. I don't even know they got married. Then my mother didn't do anything with that. I think we went to the reservation once when I was a kid, and it was an interesting experience. I don't remember how old I was, somewhere between 3 and 5. And I remembered being there. I remember the trip because we went to multiple places. But that's it. That's my only experience with the Native American side of my family. Is my mother's brother and his son and my great-grandmother and one trip. That's it. That's the extent of my interaction with that. So maybe it's because I'm just disconnected from all that, but I identify more as Hispanic, and I consider myself American, obviously, but I'm just using the term Mexicano. I identify more with the Mexicano and Hispanic stuff than I do with the Native American stuff. The culture that I live in is Hispanic. It's not a Native American culture, so maybe there's some distance there, but that's just how it is. So I don't have a problem with the whole idea of Thanksgiving. I like Thanksgiving. I've made fun of it, for the last 10 years or so, but aside from the fact that I know the history of it, it doesn't bother me. So I celebrate it, and I do like the idea of families coming together and people coming together. Happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate, and I will see you all in my next video, whether it's one of these, whether it's one of my series. Check out my other videos. I got a video where I'm doing Bible study. I got a video series where I'm doing Bible study. I got a video series where I'm reading the Quran, which that one is lively. I do random philosophy stuff. I got a video series where I teach martial arts. Watch that stuff, people. If you think this is interesting, those are much more exciting. I got to write about 2,000 words per day for the next till the end of the month if I want to win this competition. So here's hoping to victory. Peace.